Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from in the world today. Welcome to another High Vibe Conversation. I'm your host, 𝗧𝗿𝗪𝗂. With me today are the amazing High Vibe women and special guest Tarja Wiklund. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. I'm excited to dive in on this self-compassion conversation today, which I think we can all use a little bit more of. So Tarja, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell people what you do? How did you get started with self-compassion?
Well, I started my career as a psychotherapist, and I ended up thinking how we get really connected with each other. And for me, it was compassion, being able to understand how the other person is feeling and also feeling the same emotion, but going a step further, also being able to do something to alleviate the suffering. Because in terms of, I've been working in different areas, different fields of expertise, and I always found the connection through the compassion. And then I realized later on, I was studying, I realized it all starts actually with self-compassion. How you relate to yourself. Do you relate to yourself with kindness, harshness? How do you feel about yourself? How are you able to set your limits? How do you connect with yourself? And then when you're done that work, you can relate to others as well. So that's a bit from my background. And I had this amazing opportunity to meet these like-minded women who are here on the screen. And I'm very happy to be in this conversation. Thank you for invitation and for the very, very kind words.
Yeah. So the self-compassion that you realize, is this something that you realized that you were lacking, or did you see it in your patients, your clients? How did you know that this was the thing that was missing?
Well, I always realized that, we all have a kind of vessel inside of us, or a container. And without feeling that container, you're not able to fill anyone's container. So I realized it very early. And I always tried to speak to myself with kind words, with no judgment, and understanding where the things that come up or the emotions that come from. So from that perspective, I was raised by two very, I would say, I guess, strong women who were very independent, but also very compassionate. And I realized that those two things can coexist. And that's my roots. And with that, I'm doing everything I'm doing from that perspective.
Yeah, it's great that and very admirable that you learned that so early on. I did not learn that early on. I am still learning that. I am not kind to myself. And I definitely should on myself quite a bit. And put myself down. So I recognize that, yes, it is very important to start with self. And now as I work on it, it's easier to identify those moments in myself when I previously would have been unkind and not compassionate. And it's also easier to recognize when somebody else is doing it to themselves. So it's easier for me to be like, hey, give yourself a break, cut yourself some slack, hold some space for yourself. It's okay that this didn't happen. And so I tell myself that regularly, but I also try to be that beacon for other people as well. So it's beautiful that we have the opportunity to find this within ourselves and to explore it and the way that we can use it to connect with other people. So yeah, thank you for the work that you do.
Yes, thank you, 𝗧𝗿𝗪𝗂. I agree. It's not something like you receive once and then you're always compassionate to yourself. Sometimes you're very harsh, and it's a continuing process of development, I think, as life in general. But realizing that it's a core thing in order to be able, because for sure this is the person you need to be dealing with the rest of your life. So you got to be a bit kind to it, but also the ability, what 𝗪𝗪 is always talking about is, it has these two sides of, in a way, being tender to yourself, being kind, treating yourself with kindness and care, but also the other side of, being able to set the limits. So it has those two sides because without them, they're not complete. It's like yin and yang. So, but I had this opportunity as a child to look around and learn from also those people who were taking care of me. They were very, very, in a way, kind to themselves, but also the ability to set the limits. And I've always been an observer. It doesn't mean, because people tend to think that when you are self-compassionate, then you're just focusing on yourself. And it's also the ability to set the limits. It's not like you're just laying as a doormat and accepting everything. But it's the way how you do it.
Yeah. So self-compassion also means having boundaries.
Yes.
And so many other things. Linda, when you worked at the psychiatric day treatment center, is this something that you regularly dealt with when you interacted with children?
Oh, we had the coolest thing as a team. If we were dealing with one of the kids and a team member could see that we were getting to the edge, the end of our patience, they would call out Q-tip. And Q-tip stands for quit taking it personally. And I don't know if, you guys, like Dora and Tarja, you're from different countries, but Q-tip is what we clean our ears with. It's a brand name. So it's kind of a funny word to use. And so kind of like the humor of it pops you out of, our team members just watched each other for when we were going into like our egos and getting us out quickly. And Q-tip meant that you shut up, you step away. And the person that called Q-tip stepped in, fresh, not connected to the negative energy, and just there to support that child. So yeah, I worked with violent kids up through 5th grade, kindergarten through 5th grade. So it was an intense environment. They were there was a child there who had such severe attachment disorder that you literally could not like walk behind him down the hall without him feeling like he needed to turn around and walk backwards. He couldn't even have people walking behind him. So these kids really had a lot of issues going on, and I just really appreciated my team and that idea of Q-tip, because Q-tip was a way for us to show compassion, not just to that child, but to ourselves, and realize we are human, we have limits, and so again, like you brought up the word boundaries, right? Yeah, it was a way for us to really become aware of our own boundaries. And some days you can handle more and other days you can't, and so just being fully present and knowing where you're at was super helpful. I also worked in a group home with they were young adults, but they were functioning only as high as 7. So maybe they were functioning at like 2 years old to 7. They were all 21. And I the gal I worked with, we were both pregnant. She was pregnant, I think, when we started, and then I got pregnant. And wow, I noticed the difference when I would approach the house if I was in a tired mood. Well, I initially watched them with her, and they would like look out the window and tap into the energy of the person coming on duty. And if that person was tired, all hell broke loose when you walked in the door. If that person was in their power, even if they were tired, if they were in their power, then everything was chill, cool. It was probably almost dangerous feeling to them that someone wasn't, at the energy level that kept chaos from exploding. So I just found that absolutely fascinating.
Thank you, Linda. It was an important point what you pointed out. I think what we radiate, how our energy is, we receive also. So that was really, really important point, because those signs of how we manifest ourselves are so important.
If Jenny was here right now, she'd talk about how it would be about like recognizing where you end and the other person begins, right? And that separation. And that has so much to do with having self-compassion for yourself and also for the other person. So creating that limitation. Dorit, I see you smiling over there. What's coming up for you?
You know, growing up, compassion was something that was meant for others. It was something I should give. It was not for me. I didn't even know that there was something called self-compassion until I was well up in my adult years, because I was raised to serve and give and help and make everyone around me have the best of everything, and give. So it took the crash, it took the burnout, and then recovering and healing, and I was forced to show myself compassion and put in boundaries, not because I chose to, but because my body didn't give me any options. I had exhausted that that vessel that Tarja mentioned. It was broken. It had to be replaced, literally. There wasn't, it was just leaking. So whenever I filled it with something, it was just like draining right out in the bottom. And yeah, so I started to learn about self-compassion and putting the boundaries in place, and all of that. And I have been fortunate enough to take Tarja's seminar. I've been to her course. Yes. And that was quite eye-opening. It was I was like, well, yeah, I know about compassion. I've learned about compassion. Yeah. But when you talked about the self-compassion, Tarja, and went into that, I was like, aha, you know, I can do that. I can, whoa. You know, and after that, I started like deliberately adding on to myself, you know, and doing it on purpose, being aware of it, not because my body forced me to, but because I could choose to. And so much changed after that, and that's why I'm smiling, because I've been I've been on the other side, and I've felt the differences, and yeah. So thank you again, Tarja, for having me on your course. It was amazing, and I hope so many others will get the chance to do that with you, because yeah, it was amazing. So thank you.
No, knowing that your love language is acts of service, Dorit, I know how much, and it's one of my top ones as well. I was conditioned to be that way. But knowing that that is your primary love language and how much that took a toll on you, now that you have the tools, the self-compassion, and you're putting up boundaries and working on yourself, do you find that you're giving yourself more acts of service too? Like, are you showing yourself that love language as well?
Oh yeah. Before I didn't do that. That was just keep everyone around me happy. I was last in line, so if there was anything left, I would get the breadcrumbs. But yeah, I definitely do it more on purpose now. Like just taking time to go for a nice long walk with the dogs, or do a meditation, or just take a nice bath, or whatever I feel like I need at the moment, that can kind of fill me up. And when I work, I use my head and my emotions so much. So meditation and going into nature is very therapeutic for me, because I can quiet my mind. Yeah, that's important for me to quiet and kind of recharge and refill in that way. Others may have exercise or conversations, or go for coffee with a friend, or things like that. But for me, it's important to just tap into nature, or have a quiet moment with a meditation.
I have a quick question for you, Dorrit. Because we all know your number one is service. Is that your mom? Was that your grandmother's love language too? Where does that come from? Because you said you were also like conditioned, and so did 𝗧. So I'm just curious about both of you.
No, actually, it was my dad's. So like Tarja, I've had very strong female presence, but my mom and my maternal grandma. But my dad was the soft one, if I can call it that. He was always nice and helping with me with homework, and taking me places, and yeah, so he was always showing me that little, yeah, the pleasure of giving, so to speak. And also my step granddad was very nice, and I could go with them to they had sheep and a big hen house, and I loved that. So I would go with them and help him with the animals and stuff. And yeah, so and I actually learned that from the men.
So it was almost like a reward for acts of service. Yeah. So it was more conditioned reward than the females telling you have to do this, you have to serve people.
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. How about you, 𝗧?
I definitely was conditioned by my mother towards acts of service. What's interesting is that I regularly, still to this day, watch my mother give for other people outside of the family or beyond our main family unit. So acts of service for others outside the home. And then I also saw that that's her love language of receiving from the family. She could never receive from others outside the home. But that's how she wanted to receive it within the family unit. So I've seen it from two different angles, and it's completely transformed me into like being a people pleaser and do, but not just for outside the home. It stems on both sides. It's like I needed to feel that validation by completing something for somebody else, taking something off somebody else's to-do list. And then they'd see that like I helped them out, and that would be the reward of them acknowledging it. So yeah, it was like I wouldn't feel that love and know that I was worthy enough unless I continuously said, how can I help? What can I do? Where do you need me? And I inserted myself a lot, even when I wasn't asked, because I wanted that extra like love and support, and I didn't know how to ask for it in any other way.
So is recognition? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is recognition there then? Like it's a second to you?
Words of affirmation, yeah, is definitely up there for me. That and quality time. Because sometimes I just want somebody to sit down with me, and even if we're not doing anything, we could be doing everything under the sun, go, and like have a great time, but we could also have a great time just sitting here in silence and just being. And you don't even need to be in the room with me, but like, so holding space for me is really powerful, even because that's still quality time. That's still somebody taking the time to just be with me and support me. So words of affirmation and quality time are probably my top two that were not conditioned. That's just my natural way of being and feeling good. Physical touch, nope. If I want it and crave it, I really like will ask for it. Otherwise, I'm just like, get off. And so like hugs feel really forced to me sometimes. And as much as I really enjoy giving other people gifts, it's always really, really hard for me to receive them. So that's definitely not on the list at all either. And I also recognize that maybe I think my grandmother on my mother's side was also probably like acts of service as her love language. But I think that's where my mom probably was conditioned to be that way. Her father, my grandfather too. And I think probably my mom's love language is probably gifts, because they might not be like the most extravagant gifts, but like, yeah, she does like to like, hey, I thought of you when I was at the store, I got this little thing for you, or like, hey, I got something for you and it's a pair of socks, or like a bag of cookies, or like a snack, or like something. But like, she always gives that little thing to be like, hey, like I thought of you, this made me think of you, like, here, I want you to have this. And you might hate it, it might be awful, it might not be anything that you like, or you're like, why did you get me this? I've already got 10 of those, like I don't need another one. But she still took the time. So I just had that realization just now. I never realized, like, yeah, but she also can't receive gifts. So that's interesting. And that's where I get that as well. So before we go down that rabbit hole of even more of love languages, Stina, I want to come to you and ask, how do you show yourself self-compassion, and how do you navigate this with two kiddos?
Perfect question. I was just thinking about a conversation I had with a friend this past weekend. He said, our parents raised us with kind of values and systems and structures and beliefs that worked in their generation. Like, the reason they did the things is because they were effective in some way, shape, or form for them and for them to meet their needs. However toxic or dysfunctional or not sustainable those were. But they pass those on to us, and basically we're going to end up doing the same thing to our kids, like handing them our tools and saying, here, these are better than what my parents gave us, but that they won't last. And he said, because we just can't know what the future holds for them. And I said, I believe that all great parenting starts at I don't know. And I think that that's why what I'm giving my kids will in some way transcend further than what I was given. Because I don't ever seek to give my kids definite answers. I give them examples, and I show them what's worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. And I leave the door open for them to experiment for themselves. And I literally do this when they will ask me, can I fill in the blank, whatever thing it is? And I'm like, doesn't sound like a great idea to me. And, as kids do, they'll come back and say, yeah, but what about, this is, every parent has heard this. What about this? Or could I just this? Or there's always this kind of bargaining or negotiating that they want to go into. And I don't bargain. I don't negotiate. And granted, I want to also, like, slight disclaimer, I have a 9 and an 11-year-old. You have to have age appropriate boundaries. There's always non-negotiables where you just put your foot down as a parent and say, not happening. But the more you can, like, kind of tenderly navigate those freedoms with them and open those doors, it's incredible to watch. Because what happens with my kids is sometimes they'll try the thing anyways, and sometimes they won't. Like, it's not a definite either way. And sometimes they try the thing and exactly what I said happens. And sometimes they try the thing and what I said doesn't happen, because that's the way life actually works as a human. You know, there's nobody that has this ultimate authority and this ultimate, I know all the right things and I know all the right rules and I know the right way. It's all an experiment and it's all a learning process. So my kids get to come back to me and say, Mom, I did it. And what you said didn't happen. And I'm like, sweet. Guess it's a good thing you didn't listen to me. You know, and like, then sometimes they come back and say what I said did happen. And I'm like, well, I guess you know for next time. You know, and it's like that creates a relationship with my kids, not a hierarchy of I know best. I'm giving you everything you need. I am, you know, the end all be all. And it opens them up to having experiences that I wouldn't choose for myself and that I wouldn't choose for them. And I think that is so important, especially when they're at a young age where you can still protect them from certain risks, and have that, you know, those boundaries. But I think it kind of goes back to like what our guest, Jennifer, Dr. Jen was saying about, you know, the umbrella and like where's your umbrella and where's their umbrella. And so with self-compassion, I was thinking that self-compassion is also something that like you can't tell someone how to have self-compassion. I can't tell my kids how to have self-compassion. But like what Linda gave as the example of somebody else stepping in and showing you compassion, I can do that. That's one thing I can do. I can display compassion for them so that they know that they're worthy of compassion. And the other half of it is they have to see me externalize my self-compassion. And what I mean by that is like as a parent, sharing my own emotions and some of my own internal dialogue with them, because they don't know what's going on between your ears. And it's like there's things that we don't ever say out loud. Like when you were, Shell, you said something about asking other people, how can I help? What can I do? What do you need? Well, my kids have to see me and hear me in some way, shape, or form, asking myself those questions out loud, because they need to learn that dialogue to plug it into their own brains, their own inner monologue. Because it doesn't just like magically show up there. It's hard to install those things. We've all, I think, experienced that where like it doesn't just happen. You have to work at that. And I just talked to my therapist this morning about how delightful it is to realize that you have rules within your own psyche that are completely fabricated. They're just, they mean nothing. They came from nowhere for no reason other than somebody decided that was the right way. And then you carry that with you. And that is like what the inner critic will latch onto, and that is what will destroy the self-compassion. So, you know, I am open with my kids. Like they'll ask, you know, if I'm stressed or upset about something and they notice, they'll ask, Mom, are you okay? And I'll say, I'm not okay right now. Like I will tell them how I'm feeling, and I will tell them, you know, how I'm feeling, and that's why I'm going to go rest, or this is how I'm feeling. And I'll give them a little peek into like how I'm processing it. And just the way that I tell them how I'm feeling, I'm not shaming myself in it. I'm not making it wrong or bad. I'm like, yeah, I'm not okay. I've got so much going on with X, Y, and Z. And I just feel really overwhelmed right now. I know I'll get through it. Right now, it just kind of sucks. And like just that they get to hear an adult talk about their feelings in a way that's, you know, honest, detached, compassionate, empathetic, I think is really powerful for them. So it's like it's such a complex thing to try and teach kids skills that go inside, because it requires us to like put them outside of us. And so, I think that that's what our parents were probably trying to teach us by being compassionate to others, by being generous to others, was like compassion is important, generosity is important. But the missing piece there is the receptivity and the feeling like, and I deserve that. And I should expect that, I would add. I should expect that if I am a generous, compassionate person, I should expect people around me to also be generous and compassionate. Because we have to have that like measure, right? Of, wait a minute, something's wrong here. I'm being treated in a way that doesn't line up with compassion, that doesn't line up with honesty, integrity, respect. And so that to me is the value of having self-compassion, is that knowing what the contrast is. Because kind of like self-love, self-compassion, I don't think that you have to have perfect self-love or perfect self-compassion to be compassionate to other people or even to receive compassion. But I do think that it gives you this sense of like autonomy and being able to have those healthy boundaries and know when you're in a situation that is not in alignment with those things.
Right. And it's not about being transactional either. So yeah, I
Right.
love that, Stina. It's just a boundary thing. It's like, no, I deserve to be treated better than that. Hello. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah. And we get to do that with ourselves too. Like I think that's part of how you learn self-compassion. Where you're like, wait a minute, I don't deserve to be treated this way. Like people say like, well, would you say that to your best friend? Would you say that to your, to a parent or a loved one? Like, would you talk to them that way? And usually it's like, ooh, no. I heard a woman one time say, she realized like with money that she was beating herself up about her business all the time. Oh my God, how am I going to make more money? And where's it going to come from? And am I going to get another client? And it was just this constant like berating herself about money. And she realized that if she spent her days nagging her husband, who was like, the breadwinner at the time, if she said all of those things to him, she's like, I would fully expect him to leave me. That would be the most like obnoxious, like harmful, like degrading way to treat somebody, to just be constantly, are you going to be able to pay the rent this month? Are we going to be able to pay our bills? Where's the money? Where's it coming from? How do we get more? Like, and I thought that was a brilliant little example as well.
Thanks. I love the idea. I completely agree with that. Being curious is much more important than knowledge. That's the starting point of, in every relationship, not kind of coming from the point of knowing, instead of trying to come from the point of remaining curious when it comes to your emotions or when it comes to the relationships or being parents, whatever. But anyhow, I realized just when you were talking, Stina, that I learned to appreciate my mother's way of responding to things. Instead of being reactive, she was just quiet and nodding, being present, but understanding and not giving her own opinion first, how things should be. She was just listening, paying attention. And then she said, And sometimes that's even more powerful than saying those words, because we tend to give advice instead of really listening and being in connection. And we tend to know without, connecting first. So I appreciate that.
And I also love what you said, Stina, about giving them the choice and letting them make the decision on their own. Like you guide them a little bit to say, hey, I wouldn't advise this. And here's the way that like this has come up for me, or this is what I've observed in other areas. And here's why you may or may not want to try this when your kids ask, can you do X, Y, and Z thing? And whatever the result is, whether it worked or it didn't, whether it happened the way you said it would, or it happened the way they wanted it to, or somewhere in between, at no point are your kids or you being like, I told you so. Like nobody's rubbing it in, because they're getting to experience and try things for themselves. So I love that you're showing them compassion in that way to have that choice to like, all right, here's why this may or may not be a good choice for you. But if you still choose to do it, so be it. I'm still here to support you. And I'm like, you're showing them that compassion by not making that choice and the decision for them. And I love hearing that.
Yeah, I think that comes from when nobody needs to be right, then that's to me the feeling of compassion, even with myself. I don't need to be right. I don't need to be good. I don't need to be, this came up when I was reflecting on like many years ago, but I don't need to be godly. I don't need to be, above reproach. Like these are all words that are about perfection. And being a human and a parent and a kid is like anything but perfection.
Yes, life is anything but perfection. So, and also our relationship to ourselves is anything but perfection. But we are growing, and every step we learn the way. But I love the idea of also, kind of being responsive and letting the attitude being more curious. You said, Stina. I love the idea of, not giving the straight answers. That's what I've been trying to do. Like, how would you do? I don't know. I would do this, but I don't know. How would you do? Oh. And sometimes, the kids are wise. We tend to think that they need, we tend to maybe give response when there is just presence needed. So they can, or somebody to reflect on. So thank you for sharing that.
I love that. Thank you.
Tarja, as Dorrit was sharing earlier that she's gone through your course, what are some of the other transformations that you're seeing with people that have learned self-compassion and work with you?
I would say maybe a certain space between stimuli and reaction, and also learning to, taking care of your own needs and your own boundaries at the same time. And in a way, I think it's accepting that your vessel is filled the way it is at the moment, and understanding when you need to refill it and how you need to refill it. And even seeing that you also have the vessel that you need to fill. And Dorrit, I think the course is created by the participants. So thank you for being there. I think it's really, really beautiful, because when you create a course, or it's every time different, and it's the people's interactions that make the course valuable. So thank you.
I lost my thought. So, well, I'll just move on to the next one. Tarja, for others that are interested in taking your course or learning how to be more compassionate with themselves as well as others, where can they find out more information about you and working with you?
You can check my profile in LinkedIn. That's the best way. And CCT courses will be offered, I think, later on this fall online. So if you're interested, please let me know, because it's a course developed in Stanford, and it goes into the steps with starting of, paying attention, and then starting with the interaction of being with others, and then, kind of expanding the thinking to the whole world. And I think that is what the world needs, because we are all interconnected. We are not separate islands. We are the globe. So I think that's what we need.
And I've never explicitly asked this question before, but compassion and self-compassion is something, again, that I started off by saying I think we can all use a little bit more of. But is there anybody that this course is not right for?
I think it's needed for everyone, including me.
Well, you got to start
because
with
I
yourself,
think it's
right?
not something you can, think that you're ready in life. I think life is all about development, learning from mistakes and moving on, and being, open enough to respond and understand others. And I think the connection is what we need in this world of separation today. And that is what the course basically is all about, creating connection amongst the people who are joining the course, and creating a connection with themselves and with others. And like the previous course, we had people from different continents. It was so beautiful to see how they connected and how they were, related with each other, with different backgrounds, different people, different completely professions. And it was, for me, it was the compassion that made the course, and those people willingness to be open enough to understand each other's perspective, because I'm a true believer of, connecting, not separating, isolating.
I love that. So to everyone who is tuning in, whether it's live right now or on the replay, if you are open to connecting more with yourself and others to become more self-compassionate, make sure to connect with Tarja to learn more about her course and how this can help you. Make sure to follow along with myself and the other high vibe ladies that are here today. And tune in next week for another high vibe conversation, because you do not want to miss it. Trust me, it's going to be a good one. They always are. Until then, we will see you soon. Bye for now.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.